everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Danmei Digest, where I talk about whatever Danmei novel catches my interest. Right now, I am discussing Copper Coins by Mu Su Li, translated by Seven Seas Entertainment. For this episode, I finished book 1, which includes chapters 10 through 14. We have a whole new mini-plot from start to finish, and spoiler alert, Xue Xian turns back into a dragon. So let's dive into it, because we have a lot to talk about. We last left off when Xue Xian and Jiang Shining go their separate ways from Xuanmin, making their way towards Wulong County in order to find someone who can tell Xue Xian who had his dragon body before it got sold to Scribe Liu. Surprise, surprise, and by that I mean no surprise at all, Xuanmin also wants to find that same person. While both Xue Xian and Xuanmin are so unlike anyone found in our world, there are of course small things about each of them that we can relate to, one of them being Xue Xian's love for food. As he helps Jiang Shining navigate through the city, he only really remembers locations based on the food places nearby. I relate to that on a spiritual level. My friend and I joke around that we only go to sleep so we can wake up the next morning and eat. Okay, back to the plot. It turns out the person they're looking for has gone missing, and his younger brother, Lu Nianqi, is the only one at home. When they knock on the door to the brother's home, Lu Nianqi throws a bucket of water onto Xue Xian and Jiang Shining, thinking that they're thieves. The next scene I found hilarious. Xue Xian puts his hand over his mouth when Xuanmin picks up Lu Nianqi up in the air like a misbehaving cat, kind of like a oh my gesture. But because his paper effigy form is wet, his hand basically gets stuck over his mouth. So he's basically stuck in that pose, and he can't move, otherwise his hand might rip. So Xuanmin has to put him by the fire to dry him off before he can unstick his hand from his mouth. It's funny because Xue Xian is, according to himself, an all-important and powerful dragon. So the fact that he keeps getting himself into trouble is quite the contrast. Lu Nianqi's brother, the person everyone is looking for, disappeared at Fentou Island in the nearby river. Xuanmin commandeers a boat and steers it towards the island. I'm very intrigued by the talisman that he uses to do this. I've seen talismans used in other Danmeis and TV shows before, but never one as all-encompassing as this. Earlier, Xuanmin uses it to silence Lu Nianqi. Okay, that's pretty standard. We've seen silencing spells and talismans before, for example, Mo Dao Zi Shi, or Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. But he uses the same talisman to move the boat forward without needing to paddle. This talisman seems a little too powerful. Does it just follow any command at all? I wonder if this is common in this world or if it's Xuanmin's own creation. Now I must say, the author does a really good job with the setting and atmosphere. Fentou Island is shrouded with fog, and the spooky atmosphere is enhanced by the descriptions of the sounds in the wind that only Xue Xian can hear. Even the grotesque description of Xue Xian's paper effigy face dripping with ink adds to the creepy atmosphere. So they land on this island and then almost immediately fall into a deep pit. One thing I appreciate about this book is the banter between Xue Xian and Xuanmin. It's not at the point of being affectionate, but I'm sure it'll get there someday. Xue Xian, as in the previous chapters, is being carried around in Xuanmin's hip pouch. Before they fall into the hole, Xue Xian asks Xuanmin to rip the pouch's opening a bit so he can stick his head out. Xuanmin basically says, yeah, in your dreams, and that his head would rip off if it was stuck outside the pouch for too long. So of course, Xue Xian just sticks his head out of the opening anyway. When they fall into the pit, what do you know? Xue Xian's paper head gets ripped off. Xuanmin's response? Oh well, let's just burn the body. Of course, I love a sweet couple full of romance, but I equally love some banter between the main leads. Since Xue Xian's paper body is done for, he inhabits the golden marble that contains his dragon body. During the sequence, we find something particular about Xuanmin's body. We know that there's some sort of curse tied to his mole, but Xue Xian feels like Xuanmin's body is providing the golden marble with some sort of energy. There's an unbearable heat, and while uncomfortable, it seems to give Xue Xian some strength. What's so special about Xuanmin, and how does he differ from your average monk? The curse could be giving him an unnatural amount of qi or energy. Kind of like how in video games there are some abilities that grant you a greater attack power but a weaker resistance to attacks. Or maybe Xuanmin was just born this way. Continuing with the story, in the deep hole they find some sort of tomb. I don't know if tomb is the right word, but it's a man-made underground area that certainly gives off the vibe of a tomb. Inside, the brother is found and helps guide them towards the exit. They enter this room filled with some stone platforms and a dark lake of water beneath them. Then starts a deadly game of hopscotch, where they have to jump from platform to exit the room. While they're doing so, some sort of array is activated accidentally, and then a vortex of water swallows up everyone and everything. Everyone is basically on the verge of drowning, but then Xue Xian is drawn to a mysterious force at the bottom of the lake. He absorbs the thing he was drawn to, and also absorbs all the water from the vortex. It turns out that what he absorbed is part of his body. So I guess the golden marble only contains part of his body, or maybe the core essence of his dragon form. But then the other parts of his body must be scattered across the land. So the reason why he's paralyzed is because only part of his body has been recovered so far. So of course the question is, how did his body get here, of all places? And why? So the reason why Xue Xian and Xuanmin are looking for the brother, Lu Shijiu, is because he's some sort of diviner. In a nutshell, he can read sticks to answer questions. Xue Xian asks who held the marble before scribe Liu. The answer, there's the scribe, the fisherman, Xuanmin, a sorcerer, and someone that couldn't be identified. So it could be either the sorcerer or the mysterious fifth person who put Xue Xian's body fragment here. I'm sure we'll come across both of these people later on in the series. So Xuanmin was also looking for Lu Shijiu. Remember the piece of paper at the end of part 1 that says, "Find them," referring to the dragon scales? Xuanmin wants to ask who wrote this piece of paper. The answer, it was none other than himself. Turns out Xuanmin has some form of amnesia. So he has no idea why he wrote that note and what it means. Also, we learn that the amnesia is tied to his mole, since he seems to temporarily lose his memory every time after getting injured, but then he regains it after touching the mole, making the red marks recede. Also, now we know the red marks are blood vessels, so it's like his own body is attacking him. Okay, so after the water is absorbed, memories are recovered, and everyone gets up after nearly drowning, it's discovered that there are hundreds of statues containing bodies that were under the lake. The water is definitely not drinkable. The bodies are part of an array called Flow of 100 Soldiers, something to reverse fate and grant years of prosperity. Once again, another array that involves some sort of reversal of energy and good fortune. This doesn't seem to be a coincidence, in my opinion at least. We can presume that the person who created this array also put Xue Xian's body fragment under the lake. What could possibly be their motivation? The array could be for themselves, to give themselves longevity and good luck, or they could be instigating others to do these arrays for some reason. After all, Scribe Liu didn't come up with his array idea by himself, if I recall correctly. Definitely lots of questions. Okay, so finally they are almost near the exit. Then we find out that Lu Shijiu has been dead all along, and his spirit has been helping them this whole time. I knew there was something suspicious about the brother and also the bargeman who disappeared along with him. They were definitely acting way too calm for the situation, and I thought they were possessed or something, but instead we get this beautiful but heartbreaking finale where Lu Shijiu exchanges his life for his younger brother. I won't go into the whole backstory of the Lu brothers, but despite them arguing with each other and seemingly disliking one another, they truly do love each other in their own way. Lu Shijiu knew he was going to die. He got poisoned while trying to escape. So he thought, since I'm going to die, might as well hasten the process and give my life to my brother. He knew that Lu Nianqi was fated to die young, so he made sure to give his brother a good life after he was gone. One of the drawn images in the book is the two brothers saying goodbye, and it's certainly a sad end to this plotline. But it's not over yet. The bodies in the lake, yeah, those come to life as zombies and try to kill everyone. And we get the first sign that feelings are starting to grow between Xue Xian and Xuanmin, albeit like the smallest, tiniest stirrings of feelings. Xue Xian feels worried about Xuanmin's life after the zombies start attacking, and he tries to take action to save him. Xuanmin's got it covered though, and covers his copper coins in blood to basically blow up the whole island. I wonder if these copper coins are magic themselves or if it's Xuanmin's blood that carried the majority of the power. It would be aligned to the mysterious energy that Xue Xian is feeling from his body, so I personally think the blood is the key component. But also the book is called Copper Coins, so maybe the coins are also magic in some sort of way. After the island is blown up, Xue Xian transforms into his full dragon form to save everyone. And there's my favorite image in the book, which is Xue Xian's dragon form dancing amongst the waves with lightning flashing in the sky. It reminds me a bit of the Great Wave painting since the style of the wave art is somewhat similar. It's a very beautiful and powerful image, showing what Xue Xian could have been like in his prime. But this is Xue Xian we're talking about here. After this display of power, his bottom half becomes paralyzed again, and he has to shrink into a tiny little dragon form so he can be carried by Xuanmin, since he can't really move by himself. But since his lower half is paralyzed, he's kind of draped over Xuanmin's wrist instead of encircling it like a bracelet, and his tail kind of hangs off like a worm. After Xue Xian's display of power, it's discovered that more bodies were hidden in the river, weighed down to the bottom. This arc may have come to a close, but the mysteries it brought up have only just begun. Okay, another example of great banter here. When Xuanmin first sees Xue Xian's small dragon body, he starts poking his paralyzed tail. Xue Xian says, "Which book taught you it was okay to grab someone's tail like that?" Some pages later, Xue Xian confesses that if he turns into his human form, he'd be naked. Then Xuanmin says, "Which book taught you it was okay to coil naked around someone's wrist?" Kind of throwing his words back at him. Xue Xian bites him in retaliation. I must say, while it hasn't gotten to the point where I'm like, yes, I would die for these two, they are so cute, I am enjoying their interactions quite a bit. I'll also mention Jiang Shining really quickly, as I've only really talked about him a couple of times. We can see that he's characterized as someone who has a lot of knowledge, particularly medical knowledge, but isn't very confident in himself and is kind of a scaredy cat, which is ironic because he's a ghost, but then he keeps on getting scared of the other ghosts that might be around. However, he lingered on as a spirit regardless of his scaredy cat nature, so he has to have some resolve deep down. We don't know why he's still here and what his last wish is. I would have guessed that he stayed behind to get revenge on Scribe Liu. However, we learn from Lu Shijiu's ghost that Scribe Liu is going to die very soon, kind of as a karma for all of his bad deeds. My guess is that Scribe Liu wasn't actually the one who set the fire, and that Jiang Shining's last wish is to find the culprit. I have no idea who this would be, but I'd presume it's tied somehow to the greater plot. Maybe the same person who scattered Xue Xian's body also killed Jiang Shining and his family. As for the reason, no clue. The next book seems like it'll jump straight into the action, since the last couple of sentences end on a teaser for the next book, kind of like, little did he know what would happen when he went into town. So I'll have to read more to find out. But yeah, that's the end of book 1. Overall, there are a lot of elements I enjoyed in this book. The mystery, the banter, the art, Xue Xian's antics, but as I mentioned in the last episode, I'm still not hooked. When I put this book down in between arcs, I wasn't necessarily compelled to pick it back up. And while I appreciated and enjoyed these characters, I haven't become invested in them yet. I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5 overall, which is still a pretty good rating. It means I enjoyed it, but didn't love it. Will I pick up the next novels? Maybe. There are so many Danmei books to read that I would probably enjoy more, but at the same time, I am interested to uncover answers to the many questions I have. So the next episode, we will be starting a new book, Mistakenly Saving the Villain, which I'm very excited about. Thank you all so much for listening, and until next time.